So first things first, I want to talk about, we want to think of workflows kind of like a road trip. I try when I'm communicating on thing lots of different technical things, I try to make analogies that are pretty like everyday things. So think of your workflow as a road trip. The statuses are like the milestones or the stops along the way. The transitions are the descriptions or the directions to get to the next stop. And then each stop has different things that you can do. So say you're on that road trip and you can stop at a restaurant, you can fill up with gas, you can go to a coffee shop, etc. And those are going to be your validators, your conditions, your post functions, that advanced functionality that you can do. You can keep your road trip very simple and just have directions from one stop to the next stop with no visiting or doing anything else. Those are very, very simplified workflows, but we want to talk about advancing those workflows. So as we know, let me pop open our workflow that we're going to be working with. Status categories, everything that's in a to-do state is going to be a gray color. Everything that's in an in progress state will be in blue. And then everything that's in a done state is green. If you didn't understand or know those statuses already, now you do. So I like to work in the diagram portion view of workflows versus the text. I always commend those that can do the text because for me, the visual representation is just a lot easier to work through. So we're going to start with a fairly simple generalized workflow. We have our open status, our in progress, blocked, resolved, closed, and reopened. And then our transitions. I'll go ahead and turn on those labels. Again, as you can see, very reusable transition names and status names. So we've got resolve issue, close issue, start progress, unblock an issue, or reopen an issue. So now that we have this generalized workflow, let's go in to editing it and adding those conditions and validators and post functions and properties. Just to bring home, because there are a lot of different advanced functionalities that can happen, I like to talk and be very specific about when they happen. So conditions they process before transitioning an issue. So an example would be defining who has access to a transition. You can restrict certain transitions to only folks that have certain project roles, things of that sort. Validators will happen during the transition. So we've now gone from open and we're going to start progress. This is when the validator happens and they'll validate things like required fields. If you're like, hey, in order to start progress on an issue, we need to have certain values filled out on the ticket. That's going to be the validator. It's going to validate everything's good with this issue to move forward into the in progress. And then we have the post functions. And post functions, as it indicates, they happen post transition or after the transition. Things of like a post function example would be setting the resolution. That is a post function. Or, adding a comment. Once the transition has been completed and we tell the workflow, okay, now that it's been done, we also want you to do X, Y, and Z. And that's the post function. And then there's even additional functionality, which is properties. And these can be applied to both statuses and transitions, and they can add in more functionality and advanced. So for example, you can make it so it forces an issue to not be able to be edited. And I'm going to talk about how you will set properties on a workflow. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our edit mode. Exit our full screen. Okay, so first things first, as we did in the order, we're going to go in the same linear fashion. We're going to set conditions, and then we're going to do validators, and then we'll do post functions, and then we'll go in and do a property. So let's add a condition that says only the assignee can unblock an issue and move it to in progress. So we have this transition, unblock. Now when you're going to set your conditions, your validators, and your post functions on the transition. Properties can apply to both statuses as well as transitions, but the primary pieces that we're talking about are going to be on the transition point. So your transition, as I mentioned, is that direction. So when you're working on a work item, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to start progress. This start progress is what you'll see, and then the status is, the high level piece of the workflow. So in this case, let's add the condition to the unblock issue transition. And we'll say, in order to move it from blocked to in progress, you have to be the assignee. So with that, let's click on conditions. We're going to add condition. Only assignee. And as you can see, there are a lot of different options that you can do here. So if you have a group of users, so say for example, maybe you're doing change requests and you're doing cab advisory, and you want to restrict, like, your cab board is the only ones that can approve a change request. You can create a group that has those individuals in it and then state, okay, the transition from like in review to approved can only be done if they're in this group. And what it will do is that transition to like kind of move the issue forward to that approved state will only exist and be visible to how it is specified to those in the group. So in this case, we're going to say only the assignee can have access to the transition to unblock an issue. So we'll add that, and then you'll see here, only assignee of the issue can execute this transition. You can always edit that or just delete the condition by clicking on the X. So now let's go ahead. I'm going to close this tab. It'll save it. If you've done anything with workflows, you'll know that it tends to open up multiple tabs, but it keeps your original. I prefer to just stay, to close it out. It stays there, like I mentioned, and we'll just go back to the regular and start with our next one that we want to do. Let me make sure. Perfect. So now we're going to add a second condition on a different transition, and this one is going to be only on this reopen transition from closed to reopen issue. We want to only allow those with the permission administer projects to do this transition. So in the realm of this specific workflow, closed is the final state of a ticket. And so for it to go into a reopened state, we want to make sure that the person that is saying, oh, guess what? We need to edit something on here, change something or whatever, they have to have that specific permission. So for this one, we're going to click on the condition. Now, I've just noticed something here, and we're going to need to split out and create a new transition. So let's add a transition that's going to be from closed to reopened, and let's see, we'll call it edit issue. Okay. I need to clear that specific one. Okay, so edit issue. And we're going to add the condition to transition from that closed state that only permission conditions, so only those with a specific permission. So we're going to have a second step, and in this case the default is the administer projects, but if you go through there you'll see a lot of different permission options that you have on your permission scheme for the project. In this case we're going to say administer projects and click add. So now we have two conditions that we've put into play to more or less restrict how certain tickets can move from, pretty important states. Okay, so now we have that condition in place. Now we're going to add a validator. Again, the validator happens during the transition. And let's, very common use case for validators is requiring certain fields. So in this case, we want to say when it's transitioning to in progress. So on the start project or start progress, we're going to add the validator. That a field is required. Another use case for a validator is if you do any sort of logging of time or time spent on a ticket, you can confirm that a field has been modified or and check that, hey, this field has had an updated value in it. There are just lots of different things you can do. In this case, we're going to do the simple field is required. Once we, second step, we're going to then select, I think we said the team field. In this case, there's two, and I don't remember which is which. So best practice is to make sure that you put in an error message to the user when they try to transition the ticket if they don't have that team field set, that it's very clear why they can't transition it. If you don't have an error message and they're trying to transition and then it's just not letting you, so best practice, make sure that that message, that error message, is very clear. So we'll go ahead and add that. Now let's add in some post functions. Again, these are after they've transitioned now, what do we want it to do? Very common, also best practice, especially if, your resolution is always going to be kind of done. It's maybe you have a status for tickets that get canceled, or maybe you have a status for tickets that are in an on hold state or a different done state. So in this case, we're going to do a post function that auto sets the resolution to done. Now, very important to make sure that when you move a ticket into the status category of done, that resolution gets set, because if the resolution isn't set, generally the system, Jira, is going to not register that ticket as being complete. And so when you're pulling up tickets, you'd have to filter by status category does not equal done. Default is making sure that you have resolution set. It's best practice. So what we're going to do is, all right, anything the resolve issue state, we're going to put a post function in here. And with that, update issue field. So you see here custom field and then issue field. Resolution is a system field. So your issue field is going to be your system fields, and then custom fields or anything beyond that. So I'll go ahead, because resolution is a system field, but we'll also show you if you're not super familiar with what is considered a system field. We have a very limited option, but these are all the system fields that you don't recreate. In this case, resolution, we're going to say set it to done. I'm going to click add. And now we have a post function that says the resolution of this issue will be set to done. So anytime it goes from any of these statuses to the resolved state, it will automatically set that resolution to done. Now, if you use the resolved status, a single status, and then you utilize and rely on that resolution to really tell you what the status is of that ticket, and you might have several different resolutions, you may not want to set this because you're going to present it with a screen, like a resolve screen, where then they'll select the resolution. Instead, what you're going to want to put in here is a validator that says that the resolution field cannot be empty. Like it can't be unresolved. And so that will be another way to handle this. If you don't want to automatically set the resolution, it's very important that the resolution does get set. So if you don't automatically set it, then you're going to use a validator to make sure it does get set. And I'll talk about it when we do our properties, but there's a really cool property that I like to use if you work within Jira instances that have a lot of resolutions, because we know that resolutions are global. If you have, say, 25 resolutions, but really for your project, only 5 of them, excuse me, 5 of them apply, you can use a property that's called an includes property, and it will allow you to identify, hey, when you transition this property for this specific transition, only show these 5 resolutions. And that way, nobody on your team is going to choose a resolution that it doesn't actually apply to the work that's being done or that you're reporting on. So now we've put in a post function. We've done a condition, we've done a validator, we've done a post function. Last but not least, let's add in a special property. I did talk about the include and excludes of resolutions, but the special property that I want to add is the one that makes a ticket uneditable. So for this specific workflow, the closed state is the final state of the ticket. So with this, we want to say when it transitions to this closed state, we no longer want it to be editable. So here, and there is, I'll drop it. Let me grab the URL real quick. I'm going to drop this in the chat. There are a lot of different properties that can be applied. It's hard to keep track of all of them, but I did mention, so we're going to do the editable one, but there's a lot of different things that you can add on to your transitions. So this one I was talking about, the Jira field resolution include or exclude. Again, if you have a lot of resolutions and you only want to include a small subset, you would use the resolution include, and then the opposite, right? If you only have maybe 8 and you're like, hey, we need all of them, but these 2, it's faster to do the excludes. There's just things to think about. And when you put the values in, it's separated by a comma, no spaces. So when you find your resolution ID, you'll then put that into the value as I'm showing you here. So you would put in specifically this in the key if you're doing the includes. So you'd put that right here, and then the property value, you would put in your IDs for those resolutions. Again, separated by a comma only, no spaces. If you put a space in, it will not work. So I know that sometimes when we're typing, we try to default to adding a space. Don't when you're doing the property value. You're just going to set the resolution ID. So in this case, I'm not doing that one. I'm going to do, I want to make this ticket uneditable once it's in the closed state. So for this case, Jira issue editable, property value false. So now we have this property on that transition. There we go. Oh, actually, I apologize. We talked about properties being on the transition and being on the status. In this case, the transition property, so if we did the resolutions includes and excludes, you would want to do that on the transition property because that would then apply to your screen when you validate and put in like, hey, set the resolution, but only show these 5. In this case, when it's in the status closed, we want it to be uneditable. So I'm going to go back in, make sure this is all. Yeah, so I'm going to go back in and I'm going to edit this property. I'm going to remove it and I'm going to apply it to the status because I want to say when it is in this state, do not edit it. So Let's go ahead and remove that. And now click on the actual status, and I'm going to add the property, which I had already added, but I showed you how to do it. So you'd put in that key and then make the property value false. If it's default to true, so if the property didn't exist, obviously the issue would be editable. So in this case, we have to say, hey, we want you to override the default and make it false. All right, so now we've created a custom workflow, or I created a head-end, but we've looked at it, and we've given it some advanced functionality to ensure certain processes are followed, minimizing manual tasks like setting the resolution. I want to take it one step further, and we're going to apply some automations to it. But I'm going to show you, so in this case, let's save our workflow. Do as I say, not as I do. I generally don't save a backup copy, but if you choose to, you can. I just don't. All right, so now that it's live, let's go ahead and go back to our issues. And in this case, let's take a look at demo task 2. It's in the open state. I want to move it to in progress. And it's going to tell me right here, transition failed. The team field cannot be empty. Please add a value to the team field. That's that error message that we put in place when we said, tell this if you try to do it without that being set. So let's go ahead and choose a team. Now, start the progress. Huh? Oh, I know why. Remember those 2 team fields? There's that second one, and we need to clean that up. We were testing some other stuff out. So now I'm going to set them both. In this case, sure. So as you can see, that's a custom field, and then this is your Jira Teams team field. Okay, so now, because I hadn't identified in that validator that for both team fields. So now when we go to in progress, we've successfully moved this to in progress. And that is because of those validators. Let's go ahead and move this to blocked. And let's make not me the assignee. So let's have Josh be the assignee. Actually, I'm going to show you first. So I'm going to be the assignee, and I can move it unblocked. You see that right there? But now, if I switch it, I can only close the ticket. I can't move it to unblocked. That is because that's that condition where we're saying, like, that happens before the transition even happens. It's like, oh, you've told us to do this, so this is what we're doing. And that condition was only the assignee could move it to unblocked. And then we have the post function. Actually, let's go ahead and just keep working with this one. Unblocked. And let's resolve this issue. As you can see, it automatically set it to done. And resolution is, I didn't have to do anything but just click resolve. And if I go to reopened, I should be an administrator in the project. We'll find out. Basically, we're validating. We only want the ability to reopen the issue. This is going to allow me to go back in and make some edits. So I was able to reopen the issue. If the assignee or the person that's trying to reopen it does not have that administer projects permission, it's not going to let you. It's going to actually not even provide you the option because we put it in as a condition. So now you've seen, the workflow in action. Let's go ahead. Oh, let's move it into that closed state also, because I want to show you the property of I can't edit anything. So I can click on stuff because this is a Jira Teams, but I can't edit any of these values. They're all uneditable in the sense of that the custom fields. Development and I guess this plugin, because you're not necessarily editing, you're just kind of connecting stuff to the issue, you can edit those. But can't edit it because we've told it to not be able to be editable. Great. So now you've seen what we've put in place live. We're going to take it one step further. We're going to set up some automation rules that will do a couple of things for us. In this case, I've pre-done the automation rules, but we're going to walk through them. So the first one's going to be a notification if an issue with a certain priority goes into the block state. So what this is doing, it's relying on your workflow transitions to then tell Jira to do something else. So it's extending the reach that it has in the functionality that it can do from just the basic level. We've extended it one level, and we're going to extend it a second level. So in this case, send a notification when something that is blocked and has highest priority. So you'll use in the automation, the trigger is going to be when a work item is transitioned. And I think everything can transition to a blocked state. So with that, I've left my from status blank and just put it when it goes into this status. I don't care where it's coming from, just once it goes into this status, if these conditions match, then I want you to do something. Basically, if we have a highest priority, a critical ticket that goes into a blocked state, we need to make sure we can do whatever we can to get that out of the blocked state. And so then I want to notify or send an email out when that happens. What this does is it automates me having to, okay, either if I'm the person monitoring all of the work in the project, being in there immediately, like in real time seeing, oh, that moved in. It's also for, like, say you're the assignee and you have to move it to the blocked state. Now you don't, instead of having to manually go tell somebody, hey, this ticket's blocked, high priority, whatever, real time, the system, we've set it up so that when it happens, the right person's going to get a notification. In this case, so we've said when it's these things, then look up the work items that are, this is going to be, so if multiple tickets go into the block state and our highest priority, it's going to put it in a batch list instead of just one at a time. So that's just an additional automation functionality, an advanced automation thing. But we're going to add a comment to the ticket that lets the reporter know, hey, we know this has gone into a block state, and it's going to be escalated for review because that's just the policy we have in place. And it will then send an email. In this case, it's the assignee, but we could say maybe a manager field and just subject like blocked issue requires your attention, and then gives a breakdown of all of the critical issues that are in blocked that need to be looked at and addressed. And we've extended that workflow to remove some of that manual effort from our work. So we can all right, this got blocked, and you can keep on working. You don't have to then stop or interrupt your focus to then go communicate something because you've told the system to do it. The other automation that I like to do is making sure that the assignee is always set. So for this case, we chose for the in progress transition. When an item transitions from open to in progress and the assignee is empty, then the person who triggered the event, we want to assign that work to them. I'm going to live show you setting the assignee on the in progress transition. And then we can also do the notification. But here we go. We have a demo task. It's unassigned. I'm going to move it to in progress. Oh, blessed, getting caught by that team field. See? Processes. We require fields to be set, encourage best practice for the teams. Like, hey, you always have to assign tickets to teams because we are doing that. So in this case, let's go ahead and set those two teams. And now, clear that, move it to in progress. And as you see, it became assigned to me. Now I'm going to move this to blocked, and I'll show you with that automation rule, it will add a comment 1 second ago. Hey, this issue's been marked blocked because I'm both the assignee and the reporter. If this was somebody else, it's going to tell them this issue's been marked blocked and is being escalated for review. And then on my end, it will send an email to the assignee with the information telling me, hey, this is a critical issue that's been blocked and we need you to review it and figure out what we need to do to get it unblocked. And that comes through. So now I've shown you how to set up a condition, when to do a condition, when to do a validator, when to do a post function, setting a priority, and then extending that workflow into our automation rules. And those are some really great ways to make the system work for you and remove some of that manual effort.